All right, we'll jump back in. We're going to talk about one of Aaron's favorite subjects.
Yep, speed and power.
Speed and power.
Speed and power.
He said I could talk forever on this, and I said you have 15 minutes.
I can make it 10.
I mean, there's so many things about this. We mentioned this in an earlier podcast about this is one of those things that's probably the most missed.
Yeah.
It's understood that it's important. It's also the least.
Agility.
The least trained. And so let's get into it, man. I mean, speed and power programs are the sexy shit that a lot of people want to do. It's just oftentimes misapplied and people just don't know.
Yeah, a lot of times it's heavy Olympic lifting, med ball throws, jumps, box jumps mainly.
That's what I remember it as when I was training for CrossFit Games.
Right.
Yeah, that's
how it's
typically what
introduced to most people that way, yeah.
And then sprints are usually 100, 200, 300, 400 maybe is what considered sprints, but that's like Olympic medalists or Olympic track runner sprints because they can hold that speed for that long. So we've condensed it down to what they need and then spend a lot more time on the sprints, change of direction, power, max velocity.
Yeah, so if we go back to, we did a podcast about assessment and understanding, like, where do we start with this and what metrics are we using to do that? We talked about that in depth, kind of like what goes into our assessment.
Yep,
and
three of them.
Yeah, there was 3 of them.
Yep, strength, speed, and power.
No, I mean, of the speed and power.
Speed and power assessments, there's also 3.
Yep.
15-yard sprint, 5-10-5 shuttle or pro agility, and then broad jump.
And then the broad jump. So it gives us a good like litmus for like, okay, where do we start this stuff? So then, but again, this is the part where it gets weird for a lot of people is, now what do I do with this? Like, how do I get better at these things? So it's weird. Like, people understand that it's important. Like I think in like the bigger picture, like, yeah, I got to be powerful. But I don't know, like, where does this show up for people, like, in life and on the job? Like, how do you make a case for it other than it's cool to be powerful?
Yeah. Real world application.
Yeah,
real world application, getting from one point of cover to another point of cover, or chasing some suspect down the street, trying to beat him to a certain point, get an angle on him, or even moving through a house. Something simple as like you're breaching a door and you have to stay a certain distance away because the charge is going off. Run as fast as you possibly can. You get in, throttle back down, power back up to get through the door and surprise whoever's on the other side of the door.
So it's like speed, power, change of direction. You mentioned it, agility. I mean, people talk about footwork. Well, if you have no speed, power, agility, like it doesn't really matter what your footwork looks like. Like, you have to be able to control those things through those are very basic principles.
Yep.
And if you're an athlete, footwork just kind of comes. It happens, especially if you're training it that way. Yeah. So, I mean, those are certainly real world stuff. I mean, I think about just about like the average person out there and where they need this. Like, look, I mean, there's things in life that you might need it for, but I think about it more like, what would you want it for? Like, if I'm out there exercising with my kid or I'm riding my bike or whatever else, there's points in time where I want to be able to decelerate, slow down. In the wintertime, deceleration is important. I like going to the snow and snowboarding and ski. And the thing that I'm wrecked by at the end of that day, it's the fact that I haven't been training speed or power.
So when I look at these 3 programs, talk about speed and power now, I think speed and power probably is the one that's going to be needed the most by the most amount of people, but I'm not sold. I'm actually curious to see how many people, if it will be the most well-used one, if that makes sense.
I love that, yeah.
I think it's going to be the most needed, but it may not be the one in the beginning most people think they need the most. Even though on the last podcast, you literally said agility turned up 11 times out of 12 or whatever the heck it was of like, this is the most important.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because we did it back in the day in high school. It looks simple when you look at it. You see someone do it, you're like, oh, you're just cutting a room back and forth, like whatever, I can do that. And you think, well, I don't need to improve that. I could probably do that. But you haven't practiced it in a while and you tend to think you can still do that. When I know for a fact,
for sure a skill.
I cannot. Yeah, for sure.
It is a skill.
It's like riding a bike. It's not like riding a bike. A bike you can still ride.
Yeah. There are some underlying components here too that, it's like, it's a skill, but your body has to be prepared for this. And if you haven't done that, right, you can't just, I had one of my guys back at the gym say, like, you can't just try really hard to have speed, right, and power. Like, there's accumulation, right? There's a ramping up to this, and so you have to have the right foundation for it. And so application is super important here.
Yeah.
So going back to like what you were saying, like, this takes some setup. This takes some thought, right?
Yeah.
And you got to be smart about this.
So I do remember you saying in a last conversation, Aaron, that if you have to rank them, which hurt my heart, but if you had to rank them, this was
This is number one. Speed and
Numero
power is numero uno.
Yeah.
Strength is number two, and then work capacity is third. Now, it's still up there. There's a lot of other factors that can go down below it, but these are the top three for performance
in
law enforcement,
Right.
particularly special operations.
Okay, so how is it laid out? What does it look like inside the program?
Day one, sprints and squats. Sprints prime the squats. You're going to get a little bit of lower body strength. Accessory work. One big accessory piece you're going to get, especially in this program, is Nordic hamstring curls. Because that is a big accessory for bulletproofing hamstrings.
And I know for a fact when we came into the barn, we looked at all the equipment.
That's the first
He didn't
thing
point
I was
anything out. The only thing he said was, "Oh my
You
gosh,
got
you
a
have a
Nordic-
Nordic hamstring
got a
curl?"
Nordic curl machine. Yeah.
they're awesome.
Yeah.
They're amazing.
Right.
I mean, studies show that if you just add in minimal effective dose of Nordic hamstring curls, which is 8 reps, I want to say,
Total.
total.
So
2
it's
sets of 4 or 4
4 by
sets of
2.
2.
For
Yeah.
like the week.
For the week. That's it. That's minimal effective dose. It cuts hamstring injuries in half.
That's
It's 50,
wild.
51% to be exact.
That's wild.
Yeah. Something simple as that. Now, obviously, you want to progress to it. There's certain ways, and we do progress in this
Partners.
program. Yeah. You can have partners. You can attach a band to something like the rack, like what you got set over there.
Yeah.
Put it under your armpits and control down.
Banded.
I mean, you can even do on a glute ham, a GHD.
Yeah, there's a lot of
There's a lot of ways, and we do progress in that way. So by the time you get through the 10-week program, you're feeling a little bit more confident, and you can do the Nordic hamstring curls. Maybe not all the way down and then come back up, but at least controlling down a little bit more than just flopping like a fish.
Yeah. This might be a good time to add in if you're hearing that on.
Oh,
on the
Jake's
back
not
end,
here.
like,
Yeah,
Jake's
Jake,
not at this.
Yeah, Jake is off filming, shooting. The rest of us still have to continue to talk before we get allowed to shoot. So
he's putting holes in things
Yeah,
outside. So
yeah.
you're probably hearing that in the background. Let's talk just real quick. So you mentioned like sprints and squats. So if you listen to our episode on strength training, you would have heard that same type of setup. So can you talk about the similarities, the nuance, and I guess like the differences in what you would see in the strength program on sprint and squat?
is Monday the same?
Yeah,
Both
is it
programs.
so what's the difference between the two programs? Can
Right.
you talk about that?
So the emphasis is now on speed. So in the strength program, there's it's minimal effective dose for the sprints and a lot more time spent on the strength piece and the accessories versus now we're wanting to focus the exact opposite, a lot more time on sprints. So you're going to have a good warm up, same as you would on the strength program, maybe some technical work, some pushing work on how you're applying force in the ground, applying that skill directly to it in a drill, and then we're going to work on some sprints. And so it's a little bit more in depth on how much time you're spending on the movement. The strength is just now, it becomes an accessory for the sprints.
That's a great way to put it. Like the strength is the accessory to the sprint and power work.
Yep.
So
Because the only way you get better at something is spend time in it. Get reps on it, be consistent with it. And so we're going to spend more time in the movement if that's what we're trying to do, which is what we are with the speed and power program. We're going to spend more time in the speed, power, change direction.
yeah, so this stuff like from a volume and intensity and organization perspective is super important. So you're getting the most out of it and still recovering enough to then get the most out of the next workout.
Yep.
So what does day 2 look like?
Day 2 is change of direction and upper body. So an upper pull this time. So strength program is an upper push. We're working on bench because that program we're trying to get better at the squat, bench, deadlift, get really strong in those 3. Now we're going upper body pull because performance is made from the back. So
talk about that. Yeah, talk about that.
Post chain is your best friend when you're trying to perform.
Yeah, so posterior chain is so important. It's where all the injuries happen. It's where all the overuse, overreaching tends to rear its ugly head, right? And it's the stuff that's the most neglected in most workouts, or worse, or I would say like not performed well. It gets
either too many reps, not enough weight.
Yeah,
you're not getting the right stimulus you need to actually progress it.
Right. Okay. So
that was day 2.
That was day 2.
Day 2.
Day 3.
I'm assuming day 3 is active recovery.
Yeah.
Hump day. Oh,
sort of. So we have a little bit
hump
of
day or pump day.
Hump day, bro.
I thought you were going to say it's the arm farm.
Pump days later on.
Pump day later.
So
hump day?
Wednesday is a capacity piece plus recovery. So it's a shorter capacity, so similar to the zone 2.
Yeah.
Just condensed down, and then you spend a little bit more time.
Just not zone 2.
Just not zone 2.
It's like zone 9.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. It's not zone 9.
So yeah, you're getting your capacity in, and then you're going to spend like the last 30 minutes on recovery. So as you do this movement program, you're going to be a lot more sore than what you think you are. Your tibs are going to be sore, your quads, your hamstrings, your calves, your feet are going to be sore because you're not used to putting that much force in the ground, not changing direction, all that. Yeah. All of that's just going to be new things on your joints and muscles. And so Wednesday we want to recover because you want to keep your legs healthy.
This is so important. I think this is where people get themselves into trouble. Like Aaron's managed the amount of contacts that you're making during the day in the way that, or the week and through this program, the weeks and the months that you're in this program, so that you're not overdoing it. You're getting the maximum out of there, but you're not crushing yourself. Now, that's not to say like if you have like underlying things, like these won't come up for you. That's why having a nice base, a good base level of strength and all that stuff, or that stuff is super important. But yeah, I mean, I see people just way overdoing it here. They feel like they need to be doing more.
Yeah.
Like the intention is so important. How that's organized is important. The intention and then the recovery from that, so you can get the most out of it. And again,
That's a huge piece for anytime you're overemphasizing or you're emphasizing speed and power, recovery time. Because you got to treat it almost like a max effort lift. You're not going to get under 90, 95% and go 30 seconds rest.
Got to rest.
And then try to hit it. You have to rest. Yeah. So the only way to get faster is to sprint fast. And you can't sprint fast if you're under-recovered and tired. Yep. So you have to rest.
Definitely another topic we have that it's specifically focused.
We're going deep on that.
We'll go real deep on that one. Yeah.
So what's next?
So Thursday is going to be a max velocity and then a lower body pull. So you're going to focus on the deadlift. So again, post chain. You're going to work on your pulling, putting force straight into the ground.
Okay.
And then your max velocity is going to be your longer sprint. So day one is your acceleration. So 10 to 15 yards. Thursday is going to be your 20 to 40. Might not hit 40 because 10 weeks is, if you haven't done it, 10 weeks is not a ton of time to progress to get to where you're actually having great technique and can hold a speed for 40 yards.
We talked about this in our assessment podcast about why we're testing the 15 versus something longer. And it's just people cannot maintain great mechanics beyond a few seconds. So unless you're conditioned for that, this program will get you there over time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like you may not get to 40. I think that's important. Like people have to wrap their heads around this. Like, wait a minute. Like I'm used to doing hundreds. Well, stop that.
Yeah. You may hit top speed 30 in, and then it's just going to drop.
Then what are you doing after that?
Yeah, it turns into conditioning.
You're practicing bad form, bad whatever.
Yeah.
Which is another of the soon-to-come throw your running shoes away talk.
I think that's an important thing for people to understand.
So that's Thursday. Yep.
Friday is your power day, and then accessories. So you'll hit a little bit of chest, a little bit of arms, a little bit of lower body.
Pump day.
Pump
day.
I knew it was coming.
Yeah, pump day. Hump day, pump day.
We have to have one of those.
Yep. And then Saturday is another capacity and recovery day. Yep. So of the three programs, we've just kind of scaled down. We would ideally say we have 20 points. We would or 21. We would like 7 points across just to have like an even number. But if we're trying to be biased and emphasize something, we're going to take some points from someplace else and put it here. And that's the time we're spending.
So if someone comes into a Wednesday or a Saturday and is like, I don't have a whole lot of time, recommendations?
Recovery.
Over
the capacity, take the recovery over the
I'm sure that's going to be a question we're going to get.
It's going to be huge.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, it will be in order of like capacity recovery because you don't want to do your recovery work before you hit your capacity because then you're just I
feel recovered.
I feel great.
It's really different.
Right.
So what's that like? So what should they be expecting? I mean, obviously this is a speed and power program. How are we measuring this? Like what are the variables that they're going to be looking at and really tracking?
How you feel. A lot of it is, do you feel comfortable getting in and out of positions on the change of direction? Do you feel like you're putting more force in the ground? You can retest all three of those test metrics that we have in the assessment if you want to do that at the end, or you can just go off feel. How do you feel? Do you feel faster? How do you feel putting your force into the ground? How do you feel when you land and decelerate? Or you can actually just test it.
So this is going to be kind of a non-data supported question, but how quickly someone jumps on this program, right? Because they did the assessment and Winston's sitting on my cord. They did the assessment and their speed and power was subpar. Mm-hmm. How quickly after they start the program do you think they're going to see like adaptations? Again, different for every person. I understand.
Yeah, different. Yeah, if they have scored, so there's a 3-point system per section. Strength has 3 points, speed and power and capacity all have 3 points, so 9 points total. If they are 0 out of 3, it may take a little bit because you're going to have to work technique. It could take 6 weeks. It could take the whole 10 weeks. If you're a little bit more like the 2 to 2 point range, it may take 4 weeks. So a lot of it just depends on your ability.
To really answer the question, not based upon point perspective, we're talking like Your average at it, it'll take you about 4 to 6 weeks to see how to
Start
change
6
it.
weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to be in it long enough, be practicing those techniques long enough to understand what it is that you're trying to do. Plus, also apply all the things that are in the program.
That's the biggest thing I see when I deal with program for people is like they want to go on the shiny thing if they don't see progress after like 2 weeks. And it, again, like we've talked about in previous podcasts, we've done this barn of like simple things have sometimes the best improvement for you for what your goals are, but you have to give the simple things the respect they deserve for the time they deserve.
Yeah.
If you're like 3 weeks in, you're like, crap, like I don't see any change. Like, well, maybe one more week would help to see it. You know?
And it could be
Keep
that
going.
much. It could just be that one. It could be one workout for that matter. Like, and all of a sudden, the change shows up for you. I think that's so important because that, like, putting on your patience pants.
Yep.
And also being consistent to the program. This question was asked about the strength program. Like, if I'm going to miss anything here, like if I had to scale back, to make it fit my week or my shift or even just kind of I just don't have this time to do it. Where would you suggest people do that from?
Wherever your time runs out at the workout.
Oh yeah,
So
same as strength program.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Same.
So it's programmed in order of
What's usually
most
last?
important. Usually it's accessory and capacity at the end.
makes sense.
So now this program doesn't have a lot of capacity. It only has 2 days.
2 days, right.
2 days of capacity. And we already talked about what to do for if you're short on time there. If you're short on time, you're going to hit your speed, your movement work, which is your speed, your change direction, your power, and then your strength piece. And then if you have time, the accessory work. Because you're going to spend quite a bit of time on the movement. So you can get the strength piece to at least emphasize that to some point. And
again, the strength was 1 hour and 15 minutes, approximately. We talking similar here?
very similar. Yeah. Just because the same emphasis, you have to rest and recover to be able to put that same effort out.
Last thing I would ask here, just because this one's a little different. Again, if people don't know how to apply this, have never really done this before, and they're used to doing like the stuff through like burpees and cleans and things like that. How much of this stuff takes place outside of the gym, or you would need access to, say, a treadmill, or something like that?
No treadmill work unless it's programmed in the capacity pieces.
I don't program that.
Most of it is going to be outside.
That's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
So it's going to be outside. So you're going to need to have access to some place where you can get this done.
Yeah.
Aaron's driveway. That's where he does all his at.
You could get it
all
done
day, every day.
as long as you've got some flat distance, not
Right.
unobstructed.
Yeah.
Or
I would
whatever.
say 30 yards is the bare minimum.
Yep.
Some place that you have 30 yards. Now, I've gotten this question before of like, what's a good substitute for sprints if I can't do it, if it's cold outside or snow on the ground?
100 Nordic curls.
Oh, boy. That's rhabdo waiting to happen. There's really no substitute for sprint work. You can try to do a ton of jumps, but you're still just not getting the same repetition, that same effort. It's like saying, what's a good substitute for getting really strong? Can I get under lighter weight? I mean, sure you can, but it's not going to be near as effective as actually getting under a heavy weight.
I think that's an important question to ask, just so that people can, as they're thinking about it, I can do that. And then with no thought going into like, where am I going to actually get this done, or what do I need to have access to? So, and again, this is that big missed piece. So, or they've got it in their head that it's a different way. That's why I wanted to bring that up, and particularly the treadmill piece, how little running you're doing to build this power. Like, you were sprinting and you were changing direction, but you are not putting in mileage, and this is not long distances.
Sprinting and running are two different things.
Yep. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
Go check out the Speed and Power program from IEP.